Good morning, y'all. Josh is Severe Weather. I hope you all are having a wonderful week. Happy Wednesday to you. I am going to spend a little bit of time here talking about the storm that's affecting the United States across California to start the week and then heading east to affect us in the eastern United States later this week. But I also want to start the video off talking a little bit more about how warm it's been over the last couple of weeks and what we expect in the meteorological world to maybe change as we get on to the next couple of weeks. Here we are in the second month of winter, at least meteorological winter, and we started off in December kind of mild, and then we got really cold right before Christmas, hard to forget that, and then we got really warm once again with what you would expect. However, the roller coaster ride looks like it's going to continue. So I am going to share my screen with you so you can see what I'm talking about. And this is today's title graphic, and I'm going to discuss basically how very warm it's been so far this month in January. This is from weatherbell.com, and you'll see that more than half of the country has been basking in kind of fall-like warmth overall. Not to say it hasn't gotten cold, but overall we're looking at 10 to 20 degree departures from normal, anywhere from Texas and Wisconsin and on eastward. So more than half of the country has been well above the average. The exception has been in the west, where we've had a lot of snow in the mountains and a lot of rain battering the coastline. So you're going to ask yourself, is the rest of the winter going to be this way? And what I'm going to show you here in just a second is that I don't expect that it will be. Now, from weatherbell.com, I want you guys to kind of follow along with me. The last 30 years or so in the winters, we've seen kind of as many cold Januaries as we have warm Januaries. If you go back last year, we started off pretty cold, except in the southeast, but it was warm in 2021, warm in 2020, warm in 2019, but not every winter's been this way. The several Januaries before were quite cold. 2018 sticks out like a sore thumb here in the east. That was the one where my pipes burst as it warmed up here the second week of January. Again, this is just the first week of January, but sometimes that sets the tone for the rest of the winter. But I do want to take you guys back a little bit further to the year 1998, which I'm going to use as an analog because it shows that kind of the same temperature pattern where much of the eastern half of the country was well above average, some places more than 20 above average, and the west was cool. Now, what happened in February of 1998, this is from Jeremy Capel, there was low pressure coming down through the Gulf Coast and cold air getting wrapped in. This was a warm winter, but a heavy amount of snow fell across the middle of the country and into the Northeast, and amounts got to as high as 22 inches in Louisville. This was driven by extremes where we had an active jet stream, low pressure coming from the subtropical branch, cold air dropping down from Canada, and not everybody saw a big snow because usually it doesn't work out that way, but some folks that aren't used to it got a lot of snowfall. So basically, the Ohio River Valley, the Tennessee Valley, on into the mid-Atlantic states, all the way over to Philadelphia. And this is what it looks like here in Louisville with 22 inches of snow on the ground. So it is way too soon to write off winter is kind of the point I'd like to make. I'm going to show you guys the European model's weekly temperature forecast. You'll see that the warmth is in place for this month here. It's starting off, I think, a little bit too cold in Florida, but this is maybe from the chill that's coming this weekend. But notice over the next week or so, we start to see some of this warmth get kind of wiped out by a cooler air mass, which is going to take over in the west and in the central part of the country here in about 10 days. So next week is still quite mild and wet here in the midsection and eastern part of the country. But then as we get after the 20th of January, we start to see more signals that allow for more seasonable cool weather to come in here right at climatologically what is the coldest time of the year, and that is typically the last 10 days of January. You'll see the cold starts extending eastward and gets itself in place here at the end of the month of January, and this is the European weeklies, but I've seen this on pretty much all of the climate models. We're not talking extremes, but we are talking a cooler weather pattern. So the wintry weather that we've been lacking here in the east may finally make its way back in here towards the end of the month of January. At least the temperatures are going to be here. And then as we head into February, it is more seasonable. We see some moderation again. That is typical in a La Nina. We have cycles where it goes from warm to cool, but we still have a lot of cool weather in place in the west and across Canada for the beginning of January. It should warm up some in the southeast, but notice there is likely to be another wave of cold coming in here the second half of February. So, as far as winter weather prospects here in the south and east, we are definitely not out of the woods just yet. I don't see extremes like we saw in December, but I do see a likelihood of more cold outbreaks and maybe a storm track that starts to shift farther south and east than what we've seen across, with storms cutting up from the plains into the Great Lakes and into eastern Canada. We've seen a storm track kind of like this. Now, with this temperature profile, we may get more like this, which of course means more favorable potential, at least, for colder temperatures and maybe some wintry weather across the mid-Atlantic states and parts of the mid-South. Not across the Gulf Coast states, though, unfortunately, for those of you that would like to see winter weather, although I know that can wreak some havoc. If we look at the GEFS, that's the GFS Ensemble extended snowfall forecast, we can see obviously the big storms are in the west and over the St. Lawrence Seaway here over the next St. Lawrence Valley here over the next couple of days. Our next storm track looks like it's going to be more favorable for snow, again across the Great Lakes and up into the Northeast, but not the big cities. This is not really a snow signal. There are potentials for maybe storm tracks possibly that come a little bit farther south, but we don't see any great chances for snow here in the Northeast through the end of next week and into the week of the 23rd to the 27th. However, as we go past the 27th, you can see the trend does start to shift a little bit farther south into the central and southern plains and into the mid-Atlantic states by the beginning of February. This is by no means a guarantee, but the ensemble's taking all the possible solutions, averaging them together. We do see the trend for this snowpack to start shifting southward a little bit, and maybe some better chances for lake effect snow here. You can kind of see that signaled here in the purples, and at least a more active storm track that starts to drop farther south. So as we get into February, we may be switching out the severe mode across the south into more of the cold rain and maybe mountain snow mode as well. And then as we get to February 7th and 8th, again, I don't see a very strong signal for winter weather, but if you take all the ensembles and average them, some of them do output snow. So it's something we're going to be watching here end of January and more likely the beginning of February. The one thing I will tell you guys as a meteorologist, what I've seen, there's a bias in the models to tend to bring the cold weather in a little bit too quickly. So if I were to gamble on a week that I think could see winter weather farther south, it may be that January 30th to kind of February 7th or 8th timeframe. That's probably the time frame we're looking at. And don't be shocked if that switches to a slightly later time as well. But nonetheless, I don't think the first 10 days of February are going to look anything like this. We're not going to see red all over across eastern U.S. for the first 10 days of February. In fact, I think we're going to see a lot more blue. I'll show you guys that here on the GEFS. Here's your 7-day temperature anomaly. And yeah, the GFS, for whatever reason, has it a little bit too warm. But notice, according to the GFS ensembles, at least 75% of the country is cooler than average, with the exception maybe of Florida and the eastern seaboard. When you see a contrast like this, by the way, where there's warmth in Florida and cold in Texas and Louisiana, and you see kind of this contrast in here, that means the eastern seaboard may have a more active storm track. And I can show you guys the upper air heights that kind of backs that up for you to show you that, yeah, we do have a bit of a ridge here over the east, but the trough position is over here around the Mississippi Valley and Great Lakes versus where it has been in the west. So you can see it shifts eastward. So here's the trough and where it's been. We've got the ridging in the eastern U.S., and then as we advance 10 days, that ridge moves off the coast and the trough starts dropping here into the central part of the country. And then it starts to shift a little bit farther east. The GFS tries to warm us back up. I don't know necessarily if that's going to be the case, at least not this quickly, but I think eventually it does get back there. We kind of see a repeat of December where the ridge in the east, lets up for maybe a week or so and then starts to gradually rebuild back. So that's the longer term. Let's take a look here at the shorter term. I've talked a lot about the storm, so I'm not going to give you a whole lot more than what I showed you yesterday or the day before. But obviously a strong low pressure system tracking right through the northeast, and in particular New England and southeast Canada. You're going to see cold air wrapping behind it. A bit of an upper low pinches off here Friday night, so there will be mountain snow in places that see potential severe weather a day before. So Alabama and Georgia could have some stronger storms, maybe some damaging winds, even Western North Carolina. Thursday night, and then fast forward a day, and we're talking about snow in some of these spots for Friday afternoon and especially Friday night. So could be pretty good up on Beech Mountain and Sugar Mountain here, as well as Mount Mitchell and Clingman's Dome. But in the Northeast, aside from some a wintry mix here taking over on Thursday in the interior, it's pretty much a rainstorm for most of Pennsylvania with a little bit of snow on the back end. Not a big snowfall here in the Northeast at all. The big snows should be across northern Maine and across Quebec and southeastern parts of Ontario and eventually Atlantic Canada. But this is a storm track that we've grown all too used to here and is not one that produces snow in the big cities of the Northeast, I'm sorry to say. There is a piece of energy lobing in behind it here Saturday night. It may try to produce some ocean effect snow across Cape Cod, that region, but we're not talking the Northeast. New York City, Philadelphia, Boston, we're not really talking any snow at that point. It'll be cold, it'll be windy, but it won't be, it'll be fleeting cold. As we get to next week, it already warms back up on Monday. Next storm track, again, California is getting Pineapple Expressed over here, atmospheric river. That storm shoots out Monday onto the plains. I do think we could have some severe weather Monday into Tuesday in kind of the same spots here, Tennessee Valley, deep south, maybe even up into southern Indiana and the Ohio River Valley. Not a big tornado outbreak, but fast winds aloft, so we could be dealing with some severe weather again Monday into Tuesday. That moves out, and then as we head into Thursday and Friday, we start to see some shifting farther south and east. The colder air pattern here, you see these blue lines here, that is starting to advance southward. Now, will this run of the GFS be correct? I highly doubt it. But this is a trend that I'm going to be watching for you guys for maybe the Great Lakes and Northeast seeing more in the way of snow than what we've seen in the last couple of storm tracks. So that's something I'll watch for you guys. This particular run shows a significant storm at the end of next week, tracking through New England. Does not show snow for the big cities. It does show snow for Chicago and Detroit, though. So that's what I'll watch for you guys. And then notice the storm track continues to push south and east. And this is 2 weeks from now or so. And maybe the Northeast gets involved in on a better shot at some snow. But again, this low pressure track from this particular run of the GFS does not show any significant snow for Philly or New York. It's got rain for the big cities and snow inland, which again, it's 2 weeks out, so almost 2 weeks out. So it's really too soon to make that kind of call. But you'll see in 2 weeks, we do have a lot of the country turning colder here. This ridge is starting to shift east, strong area of high pressure dropping down from central Canada, and maybe potentially some winter weather now starting to spread into parts of the southern plains in areas that really could use some precipitation, to be honest. It's been hot and dry down in here. Now we start to turn colder and could be more interesting in the plains. Again, the GFS tries to track everything north and east. I don't know if that's going to happen yet. Could end up being farther east towards the mid-Atlantic states, but something I'll be watching for you guys. The Storm Prediction Center has a marginal risk tonight for some severe weather, maybe an isolated tornado, some strong winds here in the mid-Mississippi and lower Ohio valleys. I think tomorrow, though, is our better chance for severe weather. And we're highlighting Alabama and Georgia and upstate South Carolina, as well as maybe southeastern Tennessee. This is the Storm Prediction Center. The tornado outlook is not super high. It's 2% here. But the wind outlook is a little bit more significant, with a squall line likely to move east tomorrow afternoon and early evening in Alabama and Tennessee, and then later in the evening and overnight across the upper Savannah Valley and into upstate South Carolina. Would not be shocked to see this try to hang on here into Friday morning over the eastern Carolinas. If you're in Florida, I think the chances are a little bit better in the Panhandle Thursday night. And then as we get on into the day on Friday, there really isn't a risk for any severe weather. I would not be shocked, though, if this area in here on the southeast coast starts the day with a little bit of severe weather. We could have thunderstorms all the way up into the mid-Atlantic on Thursday, so tomorrow evening. Thunderstorm chance extends all the way to New York City and Philadelphia and all the way up to Cleveland, Erie. So a dynamic storm system. I don't think the chance for severe weather is super high, but heavy storm certainly is a chance. Even Raleigh and Richmond could see, you could hear some thunder and get woken up in the middle of the night here tomorrow night. So just keep that in mind. Out west, I'm going to show you guys California again here real quick. Next storm batters us on Thursday and into Friday, and more significant rain and mountain snow is likely, with yet another wave coming over the weekend. I do see some relief coming for the storminess we've seen in central and southern Cal in about 9 or 10 days. So by the end of next week, However, northern Cal stays pretty stormy until about the 21st and 22nd. There's a potential for up to a foot of liquid here from the GFS model across the northern Sierra, the Siskiyou, and also the northern coastline of California. Southern Cal will still be wet this weekend, but next week we start to see gradual improvement as everything starts to shift back to the north. So some good news there in California, even though you need the rain, we've had too much of it lately, and we don't want that to continue. Snow on the GFS ensembles here for the shorter term. With this storm, we see the potential for a few inches in Missouri and Kansas, and then some snow on the backside of our storm across Michigan and Lake Huron, extending on into Ontario and Quebec. There'll be a little bit of front end snow before the low pressure tracks past you here in New England. A couple of inches is possible. But we will likely see more like a foot to maybe a foot and a half of snow near and to the north of the St. Lawrence River in Quebec. So this is pretty much a Canadian snowstorm. A few inches of snow, though, possible Thursday night and Friday across the central and southern Appalachians and also around the snow belts here of the eastern Great Lakes, but not a major snowfall. And then as we get into next week, the GFS ensemble shows milder air coming in northward, so our better chance for snow is farther north rather than Missouri. We're talking Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin. And then as we head to about the early part of the following week, so the end of next weekend, maybe a better chance for some snow in the interior of the Northeast, but not the big cities of the Northeast. And then our chances start to increase as we get to the end. I think that's 2 weeks or so from now, 26th and 27th. Some of the ensemble members show maybe chances starting to increase. Maybe not so much in the Carolinas, these are pretty puny amounts, but more into the coastal Northeast in New England and also parts of the Mid-Atlantic region. But again, 384 hours from now, this is not going to be set in stone. So that's about all I've got for you guys. If you could, and you haven't yet, I would love if you could subscribe to my channel. I'm going to try and give you guys the best videos I can. I try to avoid the hype, but I'm not going to lie. If I have boring thumbnail graphics up there, you're not going to come to my channel, and that's not too exciting for any of us. So I'm going to do my best to kind of keep things kind of, down to earth when it comes to the weather, explaining what I think is going to be most likely to happen, not some wild possibilities out there. I will say, if you could go back and watch my kind of my forecast video for this year, I have kind of stuck my neck out and said I think we're going to have an active severe weather and tornado season as well as a flood season in the areas that typically have tornadoes, maybe our most active year since 2011, which was a very active year. So I still stand behind that, as I think we're coming out of a La Nina this spring and heading into an El Nino by the summer or fall. And those transitional years definitely give us a better chance for severe weather due to the more active jet stream pattern and the shifting that typically occurs there. And there's been research that backs that up. That's not just speculation. So I really appreciate y'all's time today. I want to give my Lord and my Savior Jesus Christ all the glory for what I do every day as a meteorologist. I believe I've been called, Romans 8:28, to serve the greater good by being a meteorologist, helping to save lives, but also to spread my faith with folks that maybe are struggling in your faith. I was for 30 years a non-believer, just an atheist, to be honest with you guys, especially in my 20s. And I was in a dark spot in my life where I felt like I was trying to fight every battle I could on my own and not putting any faith in the Lord. I did some really stupid stuff. I think we kind of all do when we're younger, as we try to figure ourselves out. But I put my faith in things. I put my faith in humanity rather than in the Lord, and tried to fight all my battles on my own. And it just was a very dark spot for me. The door opened around the time I met my wife, actually in 2012, where I began to see some changes and began to see God working in my life, but not yet accepting Jesus Christ as my Savior. Finally, in 2013, so about 10 years ago, I became a Christian. And it's now taken me close to 10 years to spread that faith with everyone else. But I believe it's very important. And really, what I do every day is serving God, serving the kingdom, and more importantly, giving folks that are maybe trying to fight those spiritual battles on their own some hope. Because I think hope is super important to us. We all started the year 2023. A lot of us said we're so glad we survived 2022 because it was tough. I know financially for us, it definitely wasn't great. And I think a lot of folks are kind of in the same boat with what things are costing. And I'm not going to blame anybody for that, but I know obviously the power has been taken away from us, you and me, the average Joe, and kind of given to the people that maybe don't have good intentions. Maybe they say they do, but they really don't. Instead, I think we need to put our riches in what's coming to us in the afterlife, and that is eternal life through Jesus Christ, our Savior. John 3:16. I want to read a passage to you guys. Let me get the right graphic up here. You guys can't see it, but I want to read you Psalm 20. It's a Psalm of David, Psalm 26 through 9. Now this I know, the Lord gives victory to his anointed. He answers him from his heavenly sanctuary with the victorious power of his right hand. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. They are brought to their knees and fall, but we rise and stand firm. Lord, give victory to the king. Answer us when we call. This is giving God all the glory, not putting trust in government, not putting trust in the military, not putting trust in organizations, technology, but putting our trust in the name of the Lord our God, in salvation, in the heavenly sanctuary, going to meet our Maker when that time comes, and helping others doing the same. So if you are not a believer and you're still listening, that is quite all right, because I've been there. But I just ask you, if you are struggling in your faith and trying to do everything by your own power or by the power of friends around you and not with God's power, that there's an easier way to do this. Not easy, for sure. I mean, you're going to face every struggle that you can, but there is hope in the Lord our God for your eternal salvation. And that is so powerful. I just can't even, fathom how powerful that is, for me or for any others. So if you have any prayer requests, I would love to pray for you. If you are struggling in your faith, but you know that there are better times ahead, or you would like to see better times ahead, I'm happy to pray for you as well. And if you could pray for me as this channel continues to grow. It's been a great 5-6 weeks so far. I see what's going to be a lot of growth, but I know that I'm putting all of my faith in God, as the results are his and not mine. So thank you all so much for your time today. God bless you all, and I will share more tomorrow. Take care.